Failure is never fun. It's frustrating, it costs a lot of money, and it really clouds your judgment for future problems that may arise or decisions that you need to make. This entire year we've really kind of sucked it up, and we have always tried to learn from our mistakes. But that's the thing about mistakes, is it can teach you something only if you're willing to listen. And a lot of times we just keep making the same ones over and over and over again and never learn anything. In this video, we're going to show you our race from US 131 in Martin, Michigan, and where I feel like my failures were at. So stick around, maybe you'll learn something too, and it should be an enjoyable video. Alright, so Martin, Michigan is always kind of a cold race. It's weird because it was warm the weekend before, but when we showed up, it was 60s, low 40s overnight. So we are going to definitely be a little bit fast because the weather's good. It was actually calling, our first round of qualifying was calling for an 897. So we decided to leave it exactly the same. And when I say it's running from an 897 is from the last run of the weather at St. Louis. So that's the number I'm getting from the computer that's telling me what it's supposed to run is an 897. But it's hard to verify that. So we decided we're just going to run it out what it was the last run, and if it ran a 97, then we know the computer's on top of things. We are dealing with a little bit of wind, but not a big deal. So let's run up there and check out what happened in Q1.
Lights come on the left-hand side. Lights will start to transition us into nighttime as half the lights come on here. And there's the other half of the lights. The day becomes night. David Stinson out of Mooresville, Indiana, the 67 Nova wagon. Corey Potts out of Charleston, Indiana, on the right side. Woo! Straighten her out there, keep between the lines, Magellan. David Stinson goes on a safari. Way out of the groove. Did it on two wheels. Dropped her down. Came back in. That track is sticky.
All right, we ran an 899 with a 6. Honestly, chef's kiss, almost perfect, like 004 from being right on the number. A little fast, so we were on the wrong side of the qualifying order, but this is a lessons learned video, so let's kind of diagnose some of the things that happened on the track that we could have done better. The first is obviously our red lit, 028 red. 028 red? Yeah, I believe 028 red. I had the two-step set up pretty high, 5400. From St. Louis, that's as high as I had to have it to get in the 30s. So a lesson could be learned here that every track's different about where you need to set your two-step, and make sure you note that so that you don't waste a run out there. If I know Martin, Michigan's gonna be a little bit tight and fast, make sure I start a little bit lower. The second kind of lesson learned, I don't know if I'm gonna number these things or not, but this is another lesson learned, is that track was really sticky, really tight. It showed up in my 60 foot. I had a 128 60 foot, which I normally do a 130. So, you know, that's not a lot of number, but it's the truck really liked it. And it would probably been way better than that. But as you saw in probably the video, the truck took a hard right. The reason for that is I've never tuned these wheelie bars in. We only put them on because it was a big tire car and I didn't want to accidentally get overconfident and then go up so high that when I come down it hurts something. So I have these kind of set up as high as I can get them without touching for the most part. But when the track is really sticky and it hits hard, they hit. And this left bar is set too far down because it hit first and it drove my truck to the right. I had to steer it back really hard. So, you know, lesson learned there. Get out there and test and tune. Get everything set up right. All right, the game plan always was to just go up there and make another rip Q2. Same setup as before because we wanted to carbon copy the two runs, weather for weather, track for track, to see if it can, you know, repeat basically. Make sure the computer is also telling me what it's supposed to run if the weather changes a little bit. So that was the plan. We went up there and it was supposed to read dead on with the number. I think it was like a 98, maybe a 99. So I wasn't gonna do anything. I was just gonna run it out exactly the same. So let's go for Q2, check it out.
Corey Potts out of Charleston, Indiana, in the Sanford Sun 1953 Chevy 3100, the Blood Brothers Racing and Potsy's Fabrication sponsored pickup truck, a 9.0. Are we, Lee? Oh, and they're waving them off. Rick Stutz on the right-hand side.
All right, what lesson was to be learned here? I got pushed off because there was a little bit of alcohol underneath the truck. We didn't know where it was coming from. We checked all the fittings. I had a couple loose fittings at the block and a couple loose fittings at the pump. Nothing overly loose, but you could tell there was some wiggle, so it had to have been coming from there. So the lesson learned here is red Loctite is the way to go on anything you can red Loctite. And you need to preventative maintenance any of these fittings and stuff by tightening them up before every race to be sure that nothing is loose. So that was my bad. The other lesson learned here is I knew it was going to happen because it happened last year. I have this catch can right to the firewall right in front of the driver's window, and whenever it gets cold it actually fogs up the window because the vapors from the motor are coming out of here and coming out the hood and then getting on the windshield. That could be a problem if I do make rounds and have to run late, that I may not be able to see the tree if I get put in the right lane. So it was basically, this was supposed to be a temporary solution to a problem I had, and it ended up being permanent because I never really had much of an issue until nighttime racing or when it gets cold. We actually have a solution to that. All right, so we're gonna mount this old Korean US Army fuel tank in the back of the pickup. And we're gonna have a vent coming out and then two of the vent tubes coming in from the valve covers. So this is how we're gonna solve the one issue that we're having. We actually got lucky though, because in the end, after I had run and got pushed off, we were still in Pro Gas qualifying, and the track got oiled down and it was too cold out to clean the track up and continue racing. So they decided to run the last half of the qualifiers the next morning before all the other qualifying started. So we had another shot at the track. We'll call it Q 2.5. Let's run up there and see how we did there. All right, so Q 2.5 did not go well for us. And the lesson learned here is when you're at the starting line, it's your time. Take a couple seconds and be sure everything's right. So what happened was, you know, I got pushed off the night before, and I was concerned that I didn't get what was supposed to be fixed. I didn't smell any alcohol in the cab or anything, so I didn't think anything was leaking. But after I did the burnout, all I was doing was kind of looking around to see if anybody was gonna push me off instead of doing my checklist. And for me, what I do after the burnout is I hit the record button, I look at the water temp, make sure it's good, and make sure my water pump is on. The last thing I do is put it in first gear. The reason for that is if I overshoot the starting line and have to back up, I have to use the trans brake to back up. And if I do that and my shifter is set for a time, to shift on time, when I let go of the trans brake to put it back into first, it'll switch to second after the allotted time. And sometimes the truck's loud enough, or most of the time it is loud enough, I don't hear it actually shift. So the last thing I do always is put it into first gear. That eliminates that problem because I'm already going forward. I did not put it in first gear. I tried launching in high gear, which my trans brake does not have. So lesson learned here is make sure you let that time be your time and take a couple seconds and run through my checklist to be sure that everything is as it should be, race ready, ready to go down the track. So the next qualifier is Q3. We're gonna go up there and give it another shot. We're gonna leave everything exactly the same. It is calling for a little bit faster run, a 97 again. I did not want to be on the wrong side of the qualifying sheet. So what the plan is to lower the two-step by 400 RPMs to be sure that I don't red light, because remember, I still have not had a clean launch since the first one. Hopefully that'll put me on the green. And then I'm gonna let off the throttle at the mile/hour cone to put me on the right side of the qualifying order. Let's go. All right, a 9025, not bad, a little slow, but it did put me in 8 in qualifying, which is, I think it's probably been the best I've had so far this year, which is not great to say 8 was the best I've had, but it is what it is. You know, at least we're making some incremental improvements. The game plan now, though, is what do you do? Because I was still 11 red. I had to lower it another 400 RPMs. This isn't science, but from 028 red to 11 red, that was 400. Technically, if I did another 400, it should be green by 004 or a little slower. I was afraid to take too much and end up running a 40 light and then have no shot at the big end, especially if I'm going to set up a little slow. So I decided 400 was enough. Before I went up to staging lanes, I made a game plan. I said, if I get paired up with somebody that is good, that I knew that can run their number, wasn't going to change it. 400 is all I got. I just got to hope that was enough to get me in the green. If I was going to run somebody that was struggling to get their number, which isn't very common, or somebody that's not great on the light, which still is not very common, I would lower it by a couple more 100 RPM just to make sure that I was green. But didn't. I ended up getting paired with Brian Snyder. We have history. He beat me in Norwalk off a double breakout. I know he can run his number. I know he's good at the light. So I'm just going to leave it alone. We're going to run it. I'm going to nail the tree. Hopefully I'm on the green and, you know, either learn a lesson or win a round, one of the two. So let's go see what happens.
So Brian Snyder, Corey Potts of Potsy's Fabrication across the line. It's going to be Brian Snyder. He breaks out, but Corey Potts red lights at the start by 1,000th of a second. Corey Potts sit packing on the smallest margin he can. That's just brutal.
Son of a bitch. 001 red. You can't get any less red. Still red, still lost. Congrats to Brian. But I used the race and tried to learn something. As soon as I go, I saw it was red. I decided I was just gonna go ahead and run it out anyway. and hope Brian didn't notice it, so that we could have a side-by-side race and I could play with the brakes a little bit and the fuel a little bit to just stay in front of him. And lo and behold, I ran an 01 with a 2, which is like a great lap. You know, I stayed right out ahead of him just like I was supposed to, still lost. It just is what it is. And sometimes those are the breaks. That's the luck of the game. This whole drag racing thing is extremely difficult, and it's a combination of luck and skill. But in order to get the luck, you have to earn it. And I don't think I've earned any luck this year. I just keep making stupid mistakes over and over again and not giving myself an opportunity to buy some luck. And this is a good situation where if I was a little bit lucky and earned some luck, that it may have been 001 green, but it wasn't. And I can't tell you how frustrating that is. There's nothing you can do about it. And it would be easy to just say, screw it, I'm done doing this, because I went 6 races this year, and lost first round in all of them. The thing is about me though, is I don't give up, and I never give up before the good times start.